Today's new camera day. I bought a Nikon Z7 II and I'm coming out this morning for a first run with it and see how it works out. So I thought with the new camera I'd head out in a slightly different area that I don't normally come to out here. I probably last crossed through this area, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And even then I was using it more to get from point A to point B, moving from falls to falls. And there's actually some interesting features along this trail. So we're gonna stop by. There's at least one named waterfall on this trail and see what we can find there. And there's supposed to be a few others. So why the Nikon Z7 II? Well, I've been shooting on a Z6 II for a while and I've been wanting a Z7 II and they finally came into stock at my local camera store. So I went out to pick it up. Primary reasons, and they're not huge, but essentially the big features: higher megapixels, up around 45 megapixels, gives me lots of detail, and the lower ISO 64 instead of ISO 100, just to give me a little bit more less noise, a little bit more picture quality, image quality, and we'll see how that works out. So the falls I'm heading to doesn't always run when it's drier out. Like I said, I am in that wetter portion of spring. I'm taking it as a good sign that this guy right up there is running. A little bit of water coming over there. So I think I'll see several interesting side falls. I've already counted at least 2. I'm probably barely a quarter mile into this. So yeah, should be a good morning out. So here we are, we made it to what's called Whispering Falls, one of the falls in Hocking Hills State Park. Doesn't get visited quite as often. It's still off of, I wouldn't call it a tourist trail, but it's still off a pretty well-established trail. So several people come by. Like I said, it's probably been 5-6 years since I've made it through this trail, this path. When I came through, it was pretty dry, so this falls was not running. So it's the first time I've seen it running. Like, it's been a while since I've been out this way. And it's Whispering Falls. It's just sort of one high drop right there. Pretty cool, nice little creek bed here. We're gonna set up and see what I can do to get a good photo of it. Pretty tall. But yeah, I'd say this is real close to Ash Cave heights, probably a touch taller, I would say, just visually. So Ash Cave Falls is about 90 feet. That would put this at 100, 110 feet. Running pretty decent today. Like I said, it is springtime. So I'm gonna get set up here, check out my compositions, break out the new Nikon Z7 II, see how it performs out here. Okay, I wandered around a little bit to see what I could line up for the shot. It looks like it's gonna be a wide angle lens because the height is so great and it's a little difficult to get too far back without these trees on the way. Try to see if I could frame something up. There may be something back this way, we'll see. But I think right now my shots are gonna be sort of like from right here, which might be awkward, but we'll try it with a wide angle. So we're gonna take a look at those, see what we get, play with the Nikon Z7 II and see what I think. Looking forward to it. Okay, so I started down here just a little bit, shooting portrait mode because it's a very tall falls. I was getting so much sky in the background that it wasn't working great. So up here at the top, there's these trees over here. So I've sort of moved over to the right of the falls now, and I can compose things a little better. So that's letting me not get quite as much sky in the background. Again, it's bright, dull clouds, not super interesting. So trying to keep that out helps make the exposure a little easier. I am taking full advantage of ISO 64 here, which is awesome. Running f7.1 right now. Shutter speed's hitting 1.6. So I'm just sort of checking my motion blur in the water, see how that goes. Got a polarizer on here, just sort of cut down any kind of glare, just to make it a little nicer, a little more saturated. So I'm gonna play a little bit more here. I think I like this spot. I did some shots down this way. I actually came up on the ledge a little bit. It got me a little bit better composition, got me just a touch higher so I can make some stuff happen. Still shooting with the wide angle lens with the Nikon Z7 II. Very similar feel to a ZX6 II, so it's been very easy to get into the feel for the menus and things like that, adjustments. I really didn't do a lot of setup to the camera last night, so a lot of I'm just going by the fly now of how I like it set up and going through the menus and doing so. Like I said, performs very much like the Z6 II as far as you know, ergonomics and settings and where things are at in the menu. So that's super nice to make a transition, you know, a switch between the two really easy. We've moved past Whispering Falls. and working our way down the trail. There's a big hollow further up here. I'm pretty sure there'll be a falls running there, so we're going to explore that and see what we can get done there. And then on the way back, I'll probably stop, pause a little bit, maybe get some textures. There's some cool tree type stuff going on here. And just to, again, experiment with the camera, play with the camera, see how the Nikon Z7 II does, get the images home, look at the image quality, see what I think. So we'll keep moving forward here and get to this where I think the next set of falls is and go from there. So I made it to the hollow that I thought would have a waterfall in it, but it doesn't seem like it's very passable. So I did find this little spot right here. Little trickle of water through some slump block. I'm going to set up here, set up with a zoom, with a 24-200, because I think if I zoom in tight on that, I can get some cool stuff out of it, make it look pretty cool. Even though it's pretty small, it's not an enormous waterfall or anything like that. I think it'll look cool. So I'm going to get that set up, take that shot, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, I played around a little bit at this spot. Gonna pack up from here. We're gonna head back the way we came. There is one little cool like woodland shot I want to try to get just to see if I can make some interesting happen. It's a little dark and dim out. I think I can get a look I like. And it's always, like I've said in earlier videos, woodlands photography is not my strength. So I like to try to practice it when I can, because that is something this year. That's one of my goals as a photographer, is to improve my woodlands photography. So the only way to do that is to practice. So we're gonna catch that shot on the way back. There's another little falls I saw on the way in. I'm just gonna go take a look at. We'll decide whether I photograph it or not. And we'll probably make our way out through Cedar Falls, move sort of quick through there. I might grab a picture at Cedar Falls just because it'd be good to have an image off of the Z7 II to compare to a Z6 II, just to see, you know, what it's like. I shoot at Cedar Falls so often, it'd be sort of nice to take a known area and compare images and see how things work. So getting a little bit of sprinkles, get things packed up, and I'll head back that way, and I'll see you over there. So coming into the little woodland section, I wanted to do a little bit of a woodland shot, and it's more the hemlock, so the shade, even this time of spring, there's getting some darkness, some moodiness. It's cloudy, overcast. It's starting to rain right now, but just this general area up here. So I stopped here at this part of the trail. It's dark, giant boulder off in the background. I like the mood. There's not a ton of underbrush, which that's one of my struggles with woodlands photography. There's always so much underbrush. I'm like, what do I do with it? So this is sort of like cheat mode, I think, because there's not a lot of underbrush. There's some greens, there's some fallen logs, some trees. So I'm just gonna stick around here a little bit, play with some different compositions, see what I can come up with. Again, this is me practicing woodlands photography. That's one of the things I'd like to improve this year in my photography, is better woodlands photography. And like I say all the time, the only way to get better is to practice, and that applies to me as well. So I'm gonna just hang out here for a little bit, see what I can come up with, see if I walk away with some cool compositions. And once from here, we'll head back down the trail. I got one more little waterfall I haven't really checked out before. Just take a peek at it, probably swing through Cedar Falls and head out from there. This is the one I wanted to check out because you can see it from the main trail, and it's just a quick jaunt up this little small creek here. It's an interesting little falls. So it drops down right there. I'm going to try to get a picture of this. It could be interesting. So I'm moving sort of quick, but I think I like my composition sort of right here. It is sort of dead on, but I can get sort of the full verticalness. It's cascading through a nice little chasm up there in the rock and down. I think it'd be interesting. So we're going to get this shot. So I set the camera up. We did a 24-200 just because I wanted the versatility. I wasn't 100% sure what I'd want. It worked out pretty well. I'm shooting around in 35mm range on this. I got the falls coming down, a little bit of green in here. Take a look at the back of the camera. But yeah, I like it. It's pretty cool. I'm not gonna spend a whole long time here. This is definitely gonna be a place I come back to visit though. There's so many probably little compositions and exploring to do here to get the best shots, but we're getting a little bit of the rain. I'm gonna take a couple more images here though, play a little bit, see what I can get. So far, the Nikon Z7 II is performing great. Like I said, so similar as far as menus and things like that to the Z6 II. It's super easy to pick up and move and use, feels super comfortable. I've always liked the Nikon ergonomics, which is a big thing to me. But yeah, super happy so far. for the trip out with the first trip out with the Nikon Z7 II. Visited some new waterfalls to me. Figured that was appropriate with the new camera, just to see how it worked. We'll get these images home, put them on the computer, open them up, take a look. We'll talk about what I think about the Nikon Z7 II. Okay, so we got home from the first trip out with the Nikon Z7 II, and I got the images pulled off the camera. I edited the ones that were some of my favorites, and now we're gonna dive in. We're gonna take a look at them on the computer, just gonna pixel peep a little bit and take a look. And after we wrap that up, wrap up a little bit of final commentary, what I think of the Nikon Z7 II, and we'll go from there. Okay, so we've got the images here off the Nikon Z7 II. I'm opening them up in Photoshop. I have already edited them, and we're just gonna take a look at a couple of them. So let's see, let's take this first one here. So this first one here is Whispering Falls and Hocking Hills, and it really came out great. This has actually been cropped in a little bit already. It's not the full-size image. It wasn't a severe crop, but the file size on the Nikon Z7 made it super easy to crop in. And here we are at 100%, and it's just, you know, everything is just great shape, crystal clear, tons of data. This large megapixel file is just pretty awesome as far as that goes. You know, it lets you crop in a lot more. Let's bring this up to about 200%, and let's move around file a little bit. You know, lots of detail on the rocks. Let's get down here in water. There's usually something interesting. You know, rocks up here on the seashore, like right there, everything like that. Rocks in the water. So, you know, at 200%, this file is looking really great. So super happy with that image, how it came out. You know, overall, when you just look at it from back a little bit, it just very clean file. So I shot at ISO 64. Yeah, super happy with the image quality on that. So moved on. This is one of my Woodland shots, black and white. Lots of detail on this too. If we go take a peek at the bark on the tree, let's get it up to 100%. So as you can see, you know, as typical, unfortunately, people carving into the trees, see into the tree. But yeah, very happy with the image quality on this. This one I did not do any real cropping on or anything severe like that. Here we are at 300%. Kick it back to 200. So here we are at 200%, and this image just looks really good. Plenty of data, plenty of room to play with. You know, you could print this super large size, no problems. I could crop in more, like, say I just wanted to highlight like this area, plenty of room to crop and plenty of data to do that. So again, real happy with this image. I think it looks real good. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pop over, and what I've got is I've got this image of Cedar Falls, which was taken with a Nikon Z6 II, and I've got this image of Cedar Falls, which was taken with the Nikon Z7 II. Bring these both up to 100%. Bring this one up to 100%. Let's take a peek at this water first. So this is the Nikon Z7 II, 100%, everything looks good. Let's come over to the Z6 II and 100%, and so much more data. Gives you a lot more room to play with cropping. Here we are, this is the same waterfalls. I'm gonna try to go to about the same area in the center of the screen. So here's the Nikon Z6 II at 100%, and you can see what we have. We've got the whole waterfall coming down. You can see some of the rocks. And with a larger megapixel file, and we go into 100%, just, you know, the much finer detail. So, you know, what this is showing is you have both liberty to crop much more aggressively, which may not always be applicable in certain landscape photography, but if you were doing telephoto on some mountain ranges or things like that, you'd have a lot more flexibility in those crops. And if you do any kind of wildlife photography, the ability that you would have to punch in on some of the wildlife when that animal was a little further away from the zoom lens than you wanted would be great. And of course, probably what's a little more applicable to me is just super large prints. I could do much larger, clean quality prints without any kind of software work to sharpen things or resize things or anything like that. The file is going to be pretty clean right out of the camera in its natural state. Yeah, pretty impressive with how much you can do. So let's just zoom these out to where you can see the whole thing on the screen, and let's take a look at the Z6 II file first. I mean, this is a fine quality image if you it'd print at a reasonable size. You know, I think unless you're pixel peeping, it is of pretty good quality. Now, popping over here to the Z7 II, obviously we've got a lot more ability to punch in, which, like I said, will help with those crops if you ever need to help with very large print sizes. Probably larger than I print now. But yeah, but definitely, you know, there's some advantages to having that extra megapixel, but it's not make or break. So I hope the review of those images off the Nikon Z7 II was helpful. Let's wrap this video up, a little bit of final commentary on the Nikon Z7 II. I'm already a Nikon shooter, so a Z7 II is the natural progression for me. I wasn't really debating switching camera systems. I really wanted to just get from a Z6 up to the Z7 II. and that's why I went after it. Now, the two big factors that I was really looking for was the increase in megapixels, and I sort of wanted that ISO 64 as opposed to ISO 100 that I had on my Nikon Z6 II. So those are the two big driving factors behind the Z7 II. So regarding the megapixels, I've never owned a camera that was over the 24.5 megapixel range, and really it's done a pretty good job for me. I'm not a big one on more megapixels is always better, but I had the opportunity, and with the 45.7 megapixels in the Z7 II, I was just curious to try it out and see what it was. And I do see some advantages to it. I don't think it's a make or break deal if you can or cannot have. If you can only afford a camera that's up into that 21, 24 megapixels range, you're fine. Get out there, practice your landscape photography. You're gonna come with killer images, and there's not really gonna be a ton of limitations. But with that said, with the increased megapixels up to that 45.7, it'll let me get back to cropping more aggressively again, which can be handy, especially for wildlife photography if you do a lot of pictures of animals and your telephoto doesn't quite reach out as far, or big mountain landscapes where you're using telephoto to get those mountain peaks and things like that, and you really wish you had just a little bit more reach but don't have the lens. With the higher megapixels, you can get that tighter crop and not lose a lot of image quality. The other piece is I do a fair amount of printing, not necessarily a huge, gigantic size. Anything I've printed at so far off of a Z6 II has worked out just fine, never had any problems. But there is sort of a nice feeling to know that if you wanted to print really big off of the 45.7 megapixel Z7 II, you can. Do you have to have that many megapixels? No. So, and that move from an ISO 100 in like a Nikon Z6 II down to an ISO 64 in the Nikon Z7 II was really sort of a luxury feature enhancement to me. A little bit less noise out of the ISO 64. You know, I'm trying to get the best images I can, so any little bit helps. The higher megapixel for that increased cropping, the ability to do larger prints, and in an ISO 100 to ISO 64 to help take any additional noise I can out of the image, get as clean of images as I can when an ISO 64 ISO is appropriate. So those, you know, I'm very happy with both those things out of the Nikon Z7 II. As the image review showed, you know, I'm very happy with the quality of the Nikon Z7 II images, and you know, my overall impressions of the camera are great. If you're already into a Nikon Z system, the menu is going to be familiar. If you're into the Z6s, Z7s, the ergonomics are similar. I mentioned while I was out in the field, I think ergonomics is a very important consideration of a camera. I really like a camera that feels good in my hand. The Nikon series, even from their old DSLRs to the mirrorless, have always felt great in my hand. Buttons are where I want them and everything like that. So really, I'm very satisfied with Nikon Z7 II. You know, if you have one within your means, I think it's worthwhile to go after. But I do just want to caution you, don't get frustrated if you don't want to go spend that kind of money on a landscape photography camera. The Nikon Z6 II is great. You know, even some of the older DSLRs, I'm always a big one to just go out and practice with what you have. Do I enjoy my Nikon Z7 II? Yep, I'm looking forward to using it much more. I'm enjoying the image quality from it, and you know, I think it was a good purchase. So if you found today's video interesting, please hit that like button. And if you want to see future landscape photography content from me in the future, including little mini reviews like this, behind the scenes and tips and tricks, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any content from me. And thank you for watching.